phones are annoying sometimes.
Okay.
I don't need a reminder of everything I have to do.
All right. And gonna try to admit all. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Northern Kentucky History Hour. We're going to pause for just a moment and let everyone enter the Zoom room here, and then we will get started. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening, and welcome to Northern Kentucky History Hour. If you're just now joining us, we're just letting everyone into the Zoom, and then we will get started. And for all those viewers on Facebook, thanks for joining us there too. All right. So once again, good evening. My name is Tara Johnson-Nome, and this is Northern Kentucky History Hour. We are so glad to have you with us tonight. Before we get started, I do just want to go over a few things. First of all, Northern Kentucky History Hour is a project of Behringer-Crawford Museum, where I happen to be a member of the Board of Trustees. I think I see a few other trustees on the call tonight, and so I just want to say thank you to them. Thank you to the museum staff who really make this program possible. If you enjoy this program, you'll probably enjoy some of the other offerings that the museum has, and we invite and encourage you to check out bcmuseum.org to find out more. I'm also really pleased to announce that after this is our 29th episode, we have more than 30 new members who we know have joined specifically because of Northern Kentucky History Hour. And we have a goal of getting to 50. So I know many of you are already members, but if you're not already, we would love to list you amongst the museum's members. If that's not right for you, please also tell your friends about this program if you enjoy it. We really appreciate your support. Also, we appreciate the support of some of our funders. We are supported as a museum by the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, ArtsWave, Kentucky Arts Council, the Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, and the Carol Ann and Ralphie Hill Jr. U.S. Bank Foundation. So, and of course, our members. So thanks to all of you for your continued support. Also, before we get started, a few reminders. We will have everyone on mute during the program, but we want you to participate. So if you have a question, if you have a comment, maybe a memory of your own about Thomas More, Thomas More University, that is, we would love for you to add that into the chat. And so that way we can hear what you have to say, but that way we can also hear our speaker tonight. Also, let's see. So everyone's going to stay muted. Also, just wanted to remind everybody that this is being recorded, and even when we're sharing the screen, videos, if you have your video turned on, depending on the device, we can still see you on video. So some of the devices that's not clear. So I just like to remind everybody that we love seeing your faces, but you might just want to think about what's going on your screen if your video's on. So, just a friendly reminder of that. And with all of that, let me introduce you to our returning guest, Dave Schroeder. Dave Schroeder is a native of Ludlow, Kentucky. He was named Executive Director of the Kenton County Public Library in April of 2007. He began his career at Kenton County Public Library in 1986 as a shelver. And in 1987, he began in the local history department indexing historic newspapers. He held the position of archivist for Thomas More College in the Diocese of Covington from 1996 to 2000. Schroeder returned to KCPL in 2000 as the Kentucky History Librarian. He serves as president of the board of the Friends of the Kentucky Public Archives, and is a past member of the Kentucky Archives and Records Commission. Schroeder is the past chair of the Kentucky Public Library Association, past president of the Kentucky Library Association, and the current chair of the Kentucky Public Library Association's Advocacy Committee. So I bet he's getting busy with the General Assembly kicking up. He's also a member of the American Library Association's Advocacy Committee. He earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in history from Thomas More College, and he also holds a Master's of Arts degree in history from the University of Cincinnati and Master of Science degree in library science from the University of Kentucky. He's a graduate of Leadership Northern Kentucky class of 08, which was only vested by the class of 07. With that, we welcome our guest, Dave Schroeder.
Well, thank you. Let's see if I can share my screen here. And we'll get started. Did that work?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, so we will begin. I will tell you, I am an unabashed advocate of Thomas More Now University. It was a great place for me to be for my undergraduate studies, and I really enjoyed my time there, and really enjoyed my time not only as a student, but also as the archivist for the college for 4 years. So Thomas More is one of my passions, and the university, well, now university is something that's near and dear to my heart. And so love talking about my alma mater and seeing all the great things that they're doing. So let's talk a little bit about Thomas More University. First of all, it was not originally Thomas More University. As many of you probably know, it was Villa Madonna College. And you might wonder why we have a college in Northern Kentucky to begin with. And really the reason is we had a large parochial school system. We had a large number of sisters. And the state was starting to pass laws that there were teaching standards. So teachers in the public and the private schools had to meet certain qualifications to be able to teach. And so this really propelled the creation of a college in Northern Kentucky. Prior to this time period, the Sisters of St. Benedict, the Sisters of Notre Dame, and the Sisters of Divine Providence, who all have mother houses in Northern Kentucky, really used an apprenticeship kind of system. So the older sisters taught the younger sisters how to teach. So it was passed on from generation to generation. So the older sisters passed on that knowledge of how to teach to the newer members. By the 1920s, right after World War I, the state was looking for credentials, again, as we said. And so the sisters started sending their younger members and their older members to Xavier University in Cincinnati, and they were taking evening and night classes. And that worked out fairly well. But somewhere around 1920 or so, the state basically said the student needed to be, if they were getting a degree, it needed to be accredited from the agency in which state in which you lived. So crossing over into Ohio made perfect sense to us, but did not make sense to the state of Kentucky at that point. And so there was a movement then of trying to find out how we were going to educate teachers on the Northern Kentucky side of the river. And if you, just remembering your history, at this point, there is no higher education system in Northern Kentucky. There's high schools and that's it. There's no universities. Northern Kentucky University did not exist. There were a couple of small business colleges, but beyond that, there's really nothing. And so the Benedictine sisters, at St. Walburg Convent in what is today Villa Hills, kind of led the charge. In 1921, they started what they called a normal school. If you've ever heard that term, normal school, it mostly means teacher college. So Eastern State, so Eastern Kentucky University started out as Eastern Kentucky Normal School. Western Kentucky started out the same way. Well, Thomas More College started out the same way as Thomas More University. Started out as a normal school. It was a teacher school. It was created to teach educators. And so the school opened in 1921 at Villa Madonna Academy. So it was not located in Covington originally. It's been in 3 locations in its history. The first one was actually in what is today Villa Hills. And there's 2 women behind the founding of the institution. And women, we will see, as a theme for Thomas More University. Women really took the charge. They took the lead. They were the primary educators at the school and had a huge impact on the development of the college. The woman in the top is Sister Ermina Salinger, or excuse me, yes, Sister Wahlberg Salinger, sorry. Sister Wahlberg was the first sister to join the Benedictines in Covington. She was the Mother Superior in 1921, and it was her job, or her mission, to begin a college to teach the younger sisters how to teach. And she put Sister Ermina Thuner, who is the woman in the middle, she put her in charge. Actually, I got those mixed up, sorry. I'm a little off tonight. Ermina Salinger is in the middle. Ermina Salinger is the, you might say, is the first, the founder of the university. And we're going to talk about 2 founders. Sister Ermina is really the original founder. And then we'll talk about the second founder in a few minutes. But Sister Ermina was given the task by the Mother Superior, Sister Wahlberg, to start the college, which she did at the Crestview Hills campus. It was open primarily to sisters in the Order of St. Benedict and to lay women. So it was all female institution from the beginning. And it was incorporated in 1924. The one thing that the sisters have that I always wanted as archivist, but understood why they did not want to give it up, is the incorporation papers. The sisters have the incorporation document of the college. They still have it in their archives and are taking really good care of it. So I was just grateful that they were taking good care of it, but it still exists and it's still there. And so that was how the college started. So very small student body, very small faculty. I think the first year there were maybe 8 students. So this started out as a very small operation, and it was mostly to get new teachers in the pipeline and ready to teach, which we're still doing today. When you think about it, you know, we have a teacher shortage today, and we're working on how to find new teachers. So it's interesting how history goes in cycles. In the meantime, though, the other 2 orders in Northern Kentucky were having the same problem. St. Xavier wasn't working for them because of accreditation standards. And so the Sisters of Divine Providence in Newport were looking at starting a college at Mount St. Martin, which is the picture on your far left of your screen, the castle-looking building. And the Sisters of Notre Dame were looking at starting a Notre Dame college on their 5th Street campus. So the old Notre Dame Academy was on 5th Street, where the current federal building is, if you remember that location. And so there was a time where each of the 3 orders was planning to develop an individual college in Northern Kentucky, which makes absolutely no sense. It was hard enough to get 1 college going, less 3. But what was going on here is each of the religious orders have their own charism, their own ministry and the way they do things. And each order had their own identity. And so during this time period, especially, there was not a whole lot of collaboration going on between the different orders of nuns. Each convent was separate. They had their own schools, and there wasn't a whole lot of cooperation going on between them. What made them cooperate was the arrival of a new bishop. In 1923, Bishop Howard, Francis W. Howard, was appointed Bishop of Covington. Bishop Brossart had resigned, and Bishop Howard was appointed the new Bishop of Covington. Very fortuitously, he had been from Columbus, Ohio, so he was familiar with the area. He was one of the original organizers of the National Catholic Education Association in 1902, which is a national school association for Catholic schools. And he held office in that association for 42 years, including being president for a number of those years. And so when he came to Covington, he had a good background in Catholic education. He knew what needed to be done. He knew schools very well. He had organized the school board, a Catholic school board in Columbus when he was a priest in Columbus. When he came to Covington, he started a school board. He started the first Catholic school board in the Diocese of Covington. What he did, however, was he said, there's no way we can have 3 Catholic colleges in Northern Kentucky. It's not going to work. You can't support it. You can't maintain it. And so the only way to get this to work is to get the 3 orders to work together. And so he called each of the 3 Mother Superiors, Sister Wahlberg, I can't remember who the 2 were from the Notre Dames and the CDPs, but he called all 3 together. He sat down with them, they had multiple meetings and decided that collaboration was their best effort. And so they decided in the 1928-1929 school year, they decided to merge their efforts together and to form one university or one college instead of 3. And they made some other decisions at that time as well. One of them was that they were going to relocate the college to get, and we think about this as being very odd today, but think about getting from downtown Covington, where most people lived at this time period, to Villa Madonna Academy, where Villa Madonna Academy is today. You could take the trolley out to basically the Greyhound Grill, where it turned around and went back. But then how did you get from there to Villa? Well, they had to have a bus that went back and forth. And so that really wasn't going to work. It worked for the academy because the girls came at a certain time and left at a certain time. College doesn't work that way. So they decided they were going to move to Covington. Bishop Howard wanted the institution in Covington. And so the sisters agreed in 1928 to work together. They agreed to move the college to Covington. And they agreed to keep the name, basically for 2 reasons. One, it was easy because it was already incorporated as Villa Madonna College. So why start over? Just use the incorporation you already have. And the other thing was Bishop Howard was very fearful of government intervention into Catholic schools. Not only on the university level, but also on the high school level and the elementary school level. He wanted the schools to have their independence, and he felt that reincorporating maybe would get the state to put more or different kinds of requests on the college, or different kinds of, can't think of the word. Anyway, it would have given he was fearful it would have given the state more influence in how the college was run. And so the sisters decided to keep the name Villa Madonna College. You'll see at the bottom of the screen is an advertisement from the 1920s, advertising Villa Madonna College and Academy. So this was right before it was ready to move. And it moved to downtown Covington. Now you're looking at St. Joseph Church is in the background, which was at 12th and Scott. On the corner closest to us is now the James E. Biggs Early Learning Center. It's part of the Covington school system. That building was originally built as St. Joseph Elementary School. The buildings in between, so the planar building in between here, closest to the church, was St. Walburg Monastery. So that was the Benedictine Sisters of St. Benedict's original convent. When they moved to Crescent Springs, they maintained this structure downtown, and many of the sisters who taught in the older city neighborhoods lived there. The building next door with the little steeple on it in the middle was their academy. So they had two academies. They had Villa Madonna Academy, and this is the oldest academy. They started it in the 1860s. It was called St. Walburg Academy. They agreed with great reluctance to close their academy and to turn the building over to the college. Bishop Howard and the sisters agreed that the college needed to be in downtown, again, because that's where most people lived in the 20s. It needed to be near a streetcar line. The streetcar line ran down Madison and Greenup, Madison and Greenup. So it was a really good location for a very small college. So the college started in that building you see in the foreground with the little steeple. That was the administration building, and that's where all the classes were held in the early days. So in 1929, the college has moved to downtown Covington, and it is now the responsibility of the diocese. So it becomes a diocesan institution. It's only one of about a dozen colleges, Catholic colleges in the country today that is a diocesan college. Most colleges are either independent, Catholic colleges are either independent or they're owned and operated by one religious order. Think of Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame is owned and operated by the Fathers and Brothers of the Holy Cross. Mount St. Joe's across the river is owned and operated by the Sisters of Charity. This was unusual in that three religious orders were working together with the diocese to start a college, and it's still unusual today that it's existed in that form. So the nuns were breaking ground early on. Bishop Howard appointed Monsignor Michael Leek to be the second dean of the college. Sister Domitilla was the first dean of the college, the one I showed you the first picture. Father Leek was the second dean. And dean at that time was basically the president of the college, but they had the title dean, not president. The original board consisted of the three mother superiors and clergy appointed by the bishop. So that was the board of trustees at that time. And the president of the college at this time period, until we'll see a little bit later, was the bishop. So the Bishop Howard retained the title as president of the college, and Monsignor Leek was named dean, although the Monsignor pretty much did the work of president. Now, you would think that this was a bit of a takeover, so to speak, since the sisters had started the school. Once the diocese got involved, they appointed a priest. That was not unusual during this time period. I can tell you that the sisters did not necessarily relinquish charge of the college. They were very diplomatic and found ways to make sure that the college was following their standards. Because primarily in these early days, it was their own members that were being educated at the college. Now, when it moved to downtown, it was still only women. And it was primarily about half the student body were women entering the religious orders, the three religious orders, and the other half were lay women who were looking to extend their college, extend their education to college. And when you think about it, and there's been a number of papers done on this topic, which I think is fascinating about women's history. And if you look at Protestant women in the United States and Catholic women in the United States during this time period and earlier, there were few opportunities for women to be professional. Women were expected to either marry and have children, and there were a few opportunities for them beyond that. So teaching, some social services, nursing. And so many of these women who were entering the religious orders wanted to advance their education. They were mostly working class, from working class families. Their family being able to send them to a university to get a college degree would have been very unlikely, because the family probably wouldn't have been able to afford that, not only for their daughters, but for their sons as well during this time period. And so many of these women not only were certainly interested in the religious life, but they were also interested in furthering their education. And so the college was meeting that need as well. From the very beginning, however, there is one woman that is really kind of the take charge woman who ran the college. Her name was Sister Ermina Salinger. She worked at the college from 1928 to 1967. Most of that time, she was the registrar. Now, I had the very good fortune when I was archivist for the diocese to have contact with a number of the previous presidents of the college. And one of them was Monsignor Murphy, who we'll talk about in a few minutes. Monsignor Murphy was retired by the time I was archivist, and he called me in one day over to he would call me over to his condo every once in a while and say, I've got some things for the archives, which usually meant, I want you to come over, I'll give you some stuff, but I want to talk for an hour or two, which was great because I learned so much from listening to him because he had been at the college for so long. And one day we were just talking about Sister Ermina, and I said, you know, looking at the records and looking at, you know, what was going on during this time period, it seemed like Sister Ermina really was doing a lot to run the university. And Monsignor Murphy looked at me with that look and said, Dave, if it had been another time, Sister Ermina would have been the president and should have been the president. Now, if any of you remember Monsignor Murphy, for him to say that was a leap for him to make that, to say that. Monsignor Murphy was a very proud man. He was very proud of his accomplishments, but he also was, he saw what Sister Ermina had done to develop the college and grow the college. And so Sister Ermina is forever remembered as really the glue that kept the college together in those early years. One of the things that I think is interesting of how the three orders work together, and if many of you, some of you probably went to Villa Madonna College. The three orders, again, they had their own differences. They had their own unique traditions. And so working together to form the college was one thing. Working together in smaller groups was another. And so they came up with this interesting idea, and the three mother superiors and the orders came up with it. And they decided what they were going to do was, for efficiency's sake and to keep their own identities, that they divided the departments of the college up by order. And I think a lot of the students probably didn't even know this was going on. But if you really look to see who was teaching in the different departments, it became pretty apparent. So for instance, the Sisters of St. Benedict from the earliest time had charge of elementary education, classical languages, mathematics, music, the library, and the registrar's office. So if you worked in any of those departments, you were always a Sister of St. Benedict. If you were a Notre Dame nun who was good in math, too bad. You are not teaching in the math. You are not teaching math. The Sisters of Notre Dame had the history department, chemistry, biology, physics, and art. Sisters of Divine Providence had secondary education, English, modern languages. Now that allowed the sisters to have their own little independence and, you know, to keep their own identities, but it also gave the orders the ability to focus on those particular areas because to be accredited, these nuns at this point to be teaching at the college level needed a PhD. So the sisters were getting these nuns out to other colleges to get their PhDs. Well, the Mother Superior, the Sisters of Notre Dame knew she needed historians, chemists, biologists, physics professors, and artists. She didn't need anything else. So she needed sisters who could teach those areas and only those areas. So it was a very efficient way of doing it. And it also kept their independence. So it's a unique history. And this organization really didn't break down until the 1960s. One of the first nuns, there was a Notre Dame nun, Sister Colleen Dillon, who ended up teaching in the English department, although she was a Sister of Notre Dame. Which was a bit shocking at that time period because she had kind of jumped the boundary. She had gone into a different department. And then things started breaking down in that regard. But in the early days, the 1930s, 40s, 50s, this kind of what you see on your page is how the faculty was organized. The priest, you might say, what were priests teaching? They were teaching theology and philosophy primarily. So the sisters were overwhelmingly the largest number of faculty. The college in the early years remained small. A majority of the students were sisters. Most of the faculties were sisters and clergy. Early accreditation, and we'll talk about accreditation as we go along, was through the Commonwealth of Kentucky and through Catholic University of America. So they were double accredited, one by the Commonwealth and one by Catholic University. Catholic University no longer accredits Catholic universities at all. They don't have an accreditation program, nor does the state of Kentucky at this point in this way. Regional accreditation societies or associations were formed, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. That makes another change to the college, by the way. In 1945, men start coming home from the war, and the GI Bill was passed. Prior to this time period, there had been a small college associated with Villa Madonna College that allowed men to take certain courses to further their education. But they were not officially part of the Villa Madonna College student body. They were in this small college that was called Thomas More College. It was a little independent kind of unit that allowed them to take classes. But to get a full degree, they would have to go somewhere else to get all of their credits. But it was a beginning. And most of the students, the male students, were from Latin school at that point. In 1945, Bishop Malloy, Bishop Howard had passed away in 1944. Bishop Malloy had arrived in 45. Bishop Malloy saw the GI Bill as a way to expand the college because all of these men coming home were getting this money to go to college. And he said, it's a shame that we have this all women's college that can't give degrees to men as well as to women. And so he met with the Mother Superiors and twisted some arms, let's say. The Mother Superiors were not necessarily wholeheartedly in favor of becoming a co-ed institution. They finally saw that this was probably a benefit to the organization. And finally, there was an agreement made that in 1945, Villa Madonna College would start receiving young men as students as well. So you'll see the ad at the bottom is from the Kentucky Post. It's the first ad I could find. It's from 1945, and it's saying that for the summer classes, the Saturday classes starting June 9th would be open to men. So officially in 1945, the Villa Madonna College becomes co-ed. So that's another movement in the evolution of the college. So from 1921 to 1944, it's all women. From 1945 to present, it's co-ed. Some of the early deans, Father Edmund Corby was from 43 to 44. Father Thomas McCarty was 45 to 49. Under him, the college went co-ed, and also sports programs began. So before 1945, there were no intercollegiate sports at Villa Madonna College. Starting in 1945, we see sports programs beginning. And Father Joseph Aud was from 1949 to 1951. The next founder of the college, we said the first founder was Sister Domitilla and really Sister Ermina. The second founder of the college, we're going to talk about just in a second. I forgot about this slide. We have a little interlude here. In 1948, by the 1940s, with men entering the college, enrollment boomed. So the numbers of students attending the college increased greatly. You had a lot of young men on the GI Bill who were looking to get a college degree. And so the college purchased property in Fort Thomas in 1948. Ground was broken in 1950. There were no buildings ever built on the site. And eventually the property was sold. There is no evidence in the archives as to specifically why the property was purchased in Fort Thomas or why it was sold. The older sisters who I worked with when I was there basically flat out told me that there was no way they were going to build the college in Campbell County, that it had to be in Kenton County. Kenton County was the center of the diocese, Covington was the biggest city, and it had to stay in Covington, or at least in Kenton County. Whether that's true or not, who knows? There's no written evidence as to why, but for about 5 years, they did own this property in Fort Thomas. Eventually, of course, Campbell County got Northern Kentucky University. So all was well with the world. Kenton County had their college. Campbell County eventually gets their college, and everything works out. Here's some early sisters who taught at the school. Sister, I cannot remember the sister's name, the first sister at the top. If anybody can remind me, if anybody knows who she is, type it out in the comment box. The next sister is Sister Lawrence Buddy, who was in the biology department. The next one's Sister Philip Trout, who taught in the history department for many, many years. She was my advisor for 3 of my 4 years at Thomas More. Sister Frances Bamberger, who was in the sociology department for a while and was Dean of Women. She was the Sister of Charity of Nazareth. Sister Loretto Marie Driscoll is at the bottom in the middle. She was the Sister of Divine Providence who taught in the English department. And Sister Mary Albert, who is also a historian, is there receiving the award. I don't remember what the award was for, but Sister Mary Albert and Sister Mary Phillip, they're the ones on the far right-hand side, were head of the history department for probably a combined total of at least 30 years. And I had the good fortune of being taught by Sister Phillip. I never was taught by Sister Mary Albert. She had retired by the time I got to the college. But again, when you think of the college during this time period, most of the faculty would be like the women you see. These were PhDs. Villa Madonna had a very strong tradition of making sure that their faculty had PhDs. The sisters invested enormous amounts of money sending sisters to Catholic University of America, Notre Dame, some to state schools. So Sister Casimira, some of you might have remembered Sister Casimira. She was later Sister Rita Marie. She used to visit me in the archives every once in a while. She was a Sister of Notre Dame, and she was supposed to be, I believe, a biologist. She was called in by the Mother Superior, who said, "You are getting a PhD in chemistry, and you start next week, and you will be going to the University of Cincinnati." And Sister said, "Yes, ma'am," and she did. This was the 1930s. She was the only woman in the program, and she was in full habit. So if you look at the 2 Notre Dame sisters on the far right again, that's what Sister Casimira was wearing when she went to UC, and she was in a room full of men, all learning about chemistry and physics, and she was the only woman. And I said to her one day, I said, "Sister, how was that?" And she looked at me with a grin and she said, "It was the best 5 years of my life." She said, "I loved it." She said, "Once those men figured out that I had a brain," and she said, "once they got over the habit," she said, "we became fast friends." So she loved telling that story. The campus grew in downtown Covington. I showed you the original building that was the old St. Walburg Monastery, old St. Walburg Academy. As the school grew, they had to expand the campus. Some of the new buildings are listed there. They use the old Mother of God School, which is the photo in the middle. The Cathedral School, which is the photo at the bottom. St. Joseph's School, which is now Biggs Early Learning Center. There was Columbus Hall, which is in the top left-hand photo, which originally was the Knights of Columbus building. They bought that building in the early 1960s. Villa Madonna College did. They had Aquinas Hall, Columbus Hall, Bernard Hall, Cabrini Hall, Thomas More Hall. Most of those halls at the bottom were basically homes or businesses that had been converted into classrooms. One of them was a firehouse on 12th Street. So it was a former firehouse that was converted into science labs. One of them was a saloon that had been remodeled into several classrooms. They were very landlocked. You know, if you think of that part of Covington, there was nowhere to go. So you found the room and you expanded in what you could do. So that's what they did. So the college campus started growing up around the cathedral, and these small homes and businesses were leased, for the most part, rented, and became classrooms and offices for the faculty. So the college really developed in downtown Covington. The problem with this was they didn't own most of the buildings, so they couldn't do what they really wanted to do with most of them. They were not built as classrooms. They were not built as office space. There were tales of students in the old saloon that had become one of the classrooms of patrons of the saloon wandering in during classes to have a beer. And so there was the downtown Covington campus was becoming an impediment because the college was growing, but there was nowhere to go. Parking also was a huge problem. Students were parking everywhere. The archives had some wonderful photos of cars parked in the most inventive ways I've ever seen in my life, because everybody was trying to find a parking spot so that they could park and get to the classroom. So 1951, Monsignor John Murphy arrives on the scene, and I love this picture of Monsignor Murphy. He's smoking his cigar in his office. This just screams Father Murphy to me, Monsignor Murphy. He arrives in 1951 as dean, so he's carrying on the tradition as dean. During his time period, the property is bought in Crestview Hills. They were looking at one other site in Kenton County, by the way, which I think would have been an interesting outcome if they had chosen it. The other site was Lookout Stud Farm, so where the Lookout Farm subdivision sits. They were looking at that property the same time they were looking at their current property. They decided on the current property in Crestview Hills, which they purchased. In 1953, he convinced Bishop Malloy to give him the title of president. So from 1953 on, the head of the college is the president, and the bishop took the title of chancellor. Now the bishop still holds that title. So today the chancellor of Thomas More University is Bishop Roger Foys, who's the bishop of the Diocese of Covington. Accreditation became another big issue. We've talked about accreditation several times. Thomas More just went through a round of accreditation with the Southern Association. So the country is eventually divided into regions, and there are accrediting agencies formed. Since we are in the southern part of the United States, Kentucky becomes part of the Southern Association, which becomes the accrediting agency for high schools and universities and colleges in the southeastern United States. So being accredited by the state or by Catholic University was no longer considered good enough. You needed that regional accreditation from that society. It's called SACS, if you've ever heard of SACS. The Southern Association of Colleges and Secondary Schools, SACSS. And so Father Murphy's main goal was to become accredited. Because if you were not accredited and you had received your diploma at Villa Madonna and then you wanted to go, say, to Xavier to get a master's, Xavier could accept or deny those credits because technically the college was not accredited. And so that was Murphy's, one of his main goals was to become accredited. The main deficiency was the campus. Every time Southern Association sent people to look at the college, the main deficiency was the campus. They needed to build a new campus. So in 1966, ground is broken on the new campus, May 9th. It was ready for occupancy January of 1968. 1968 also marks the founding of Northern Kentucky University. So 1968 was a big year in Northern Kentucky for higher ed. Thomas More moved to their brand new campus, and Northern Kentucky University becomes a full-fledged university as part of the state school system. And you'll see that this is Siler Commons, the picture at the bottom, which looks very much the same today. There's some changes, but you'll see it still says VMC there, Villa Madonna College. So initially when the college moved out, it was briefly still remained Villa Madonna College. Later in 1968, it's decided to change the name. This was a tad controversial because for a number of years now, since the 1920s, since 1921, it was always Villa Madonna College. Monsignor Murphy and the board felt that the college and the academy were being confused. He wanted a name that had more meaning towards education and kind of the mission of the university. Thomas More was a name that had been kicked around. John Fisher was another name that had been kicked around, St. John Fisher. They finally decided on Thomas More as the name, and the name was changed in 1968 from Villa Madonna College to Thomas More College. So, and there are still some alumni who still hold very dear to that Villa Madonna College title. They went to Villa. They didn't go to Thomas More. And so it always surprised me when I would talk to an alumnus about, going to Thomas More College and say, I went to Villa Madonna College. So some of the older alumni still refer to the original name. By the way, that is Louis Nunn, Governor Louis Nunn, in the other picture next to Father Murphy laying the cornerstone. So if you walk into the main door at Thomas More College, into the administration building, right around that corner where the priest is standing holding the crozier, right around that corner is the main entry to the building. So you can still see the cornerstone today. Here are some photos of the college under construction at the top, the residence halls at the bottom. Moving out of Covington allowed them to build dormitories. Before then, the sisters found residences for students who were living on campus or who wanted to, didn't have a home in the region. This allowed them to actually have physical dormitories. The bottom picture is the moving of the library. And one of the sisters told me the greatest story. The library was originally in the admin building, that old St. Walburg Monastery or old St. Walburg Academy building. When they bought Columbus Hall, the old Knights of Columbus, it was moved into that building. When they moved out to Crestview Hills, they had to move it from the second floor of Columbus Hall into trucks, out to Crestview Hills and into the new building. So they built a slide out of one of the windows at Columbus Hall. They borrowed beer crates from Bavarian Brewery. They filled the beer crates with the books. They shot them down the slide, put them on the truck, took them out to Crestview Hills, put them onto carts, and students at the other end. So you had students at one end, students at this end. This young lady here is unpacking them and putting them on the new shelves in the new library. So I always thought that was an interesting story. Last graduating class at VMC is June 4th, 1968. And this is a photograph of them leaving the old cathedral school. The facade of that building is still there. It's right across the street from the cathedral. It's now the Chancery building. So it's where the Diocese of Covington's offices are on Madison Avenue. The rear of the building was demolished, but the front is still intact. So they're walking out of that building across the street into the cathedral. Traditionally, the graduation ceremonies were done at the cathedral. When the Connor Convocation Center was built, diplomas began to be, graduation ceremonies were done on campus at Crestview Hills and a baccalaureate mass is still said at the cathedral. I was the second class that graduated from the Connor Convocation Center. We had the baccalaureate mass in the morning, and then we had the graduation ceremony in the Convocation Center on campus in the afternoon. If you want to know who the Grand Marshal is of that class, it's Judy Mittendorf. That's part of the Kenton County Library collection. At the dedication, this is probably one of the things that Thomas More is best known for is the president arrived and actually was at the dedication. So this is a photograph of Lyndon B. Johnson. President Johnson in 1968. If you remember 1968, it was a great year because it was the year I was born, but it was a horrible year. When you think of 1968, Martin Luther King is assassinated. RFK is assassinated. Vietnam is in full bloom, and the president is having lots of difficulties, not only from the opposing party, but also from his own party. And so he is looking for an event to attend that would be not so controversial, one that he could get in and get out of fairly quickly. And he wanted to be on a college campus. And so he was invited and he accepted. It was kept fairly secret. There were a number of people who were on the committee that knew he was coming. And when a president accepts an invitation, there's always this little caveat of, unless something else comes up. So, you know, they really did not advertise that he was going to be there because they really weren't sure until a day or two before, or even maybe that day, that he was actually going to show up. So when he arrived, they had shoved in a separate piece into the program saying that the President of the United States was there for the program. And he did give a speech at the dedication of the college. So one of the prized possessions of the archives at Thomas More is a cigarette case with the original cigarettes in it, and a signed program for the dedication, and a napkin, all with Air Force One's logo on them. They're still at the archives of Thomas More, and occasionally they're brought out for special occasions as mementos of the president being at the dedication. Things started changing in the 1960s. There are fewer nuns in general. There are fewer nuns with PhDs, and the college was growing. And so lay faculty were being hired at a much quicker pace. And so I've given you kind of a nice little montage of some of the lay faculty. The top is Dr. Ray Bear, who was academic dean for a number of years, or vice president of academic affairs was the actual title. Has been in the history department since the 1970s. Below him, the only color photograph is Chris Lawrence, who is still in the biology department. He's in charge of the Ohio Field Station, the Ohio River Field Station, which is nationally known for its biology program. Ann Hicks is a smaller photograph. She was in chemistry. Nancy Bruns was the registrar for many, many years. She also taught history. Ron Mellish is in the upper right-hand corner, who taught drama and many of the productions done by the Villa Players. They're still called the Villa Players, by the way, even though the college changed its name to Thomas More. One of the things that is held on is the name of the drama club. It's the Villa Players. And at the bottom is Dr. Bryant, who is a biologist. So just a sampling of things changing. So fewer and fewer sisters on the faculty, fewer priests on the faculty, more lay people on the faculty. So that was a definite change. College continued to progress. 1967, the biology field station, which I just mentioned, was acquired from the United States government, which is now education facility. They do programs for children. Also, the students of the college in the biology program in particular do hands-on experiential learning there. 1972, the science building is completed. If you look at the photo, the lower photo in the picture, that's the stairwell that goes down 4 flights. I hated that stairwell. It's a constant loop, but that's the science building. until the science building was built in 1972, the science classes were still held in downtown Covington. So it took a while to move everything out to Crestview Hills. 89, the Convocation Center was built and named after Coach Connor. His son is still the head of the athletic department today. So the Connor family has a long tradition at Thomas More. The observatory, or actually the student union, was built in 1999. The observatory, 2002, and the Murphy Residence Hall, named after Monsignor Murphy, in 2003. President since then. So after Monsignor Murphy, he leaves actually to become a vice president at Catholic University of America. And these are the presidents since then. So Dr. Richard DeGraff, Dr. Robert Giroux, Dr. Thomas Coffey, Dr. Charles Bensman, Father William Cleaves, Dr. Joseph Lee, Sister Margaret Stahlmeyer, who brought back the tradition of a woman religious being the head of the college. So Sister Margaret was president from 2005 to 2013. David Armstrong, who was here from 2013 to 18. And the current president is Joseph Chillo, who's been here since 2019. So, he's been a wonderful addition to the college and to the community. He's doing some great work and pushing the college forward. The chapel dedication in 2012. There was always a plan to build a chapel in the middle of the campus, but it could never get done. They never seemed to be able to pull it off. Sister Margaret Stahlmeyer, the Sister of Divine Providence, who was president, under her administration, she got the chapel built. So in 2012, the chapel's built. The architectural firm Robert Emmett Hayes and Associates designed it. The stained glass was done by Sister Emmanuel Pieper, who is a sister of St. Benedict. So it ties in nicely with the college. The deacon lighting the candle is Deacon Franzen, who taught in the chemistry department for many, many years at Thomas More. He is a PhD in chemistry. And finally, 2018, university status is achieved. The college is the university is broken into 4 colleges: the College of Arts and Science, the College of Business, the College of Education and Health Sciences, and the Institute for Ethical Leadership and Interdisciplinary Studies. This is the last slide, and then I will entertain a few questions. I always got this was the most asked question when I was archivist for the college. I always got tired of answering this question. I always had a packet ready to go for anybody who asked about the Monte Casino Chapel, because I knew it was going to be asked. I put it in an envelope and sent it off. It was built by the Benedictine brothers in Covington in the Monte Casino neighborhood overlooking St. Augustine, Pieselberg area. It was built in the early 1900s by Father Brother Soltis, and it was a field chapel. It basically holds 2 people. It has a very small altar that originally had the Pietà on it. So Mary holding the dead body of her son after he was taken down off the cross. It was moved in the 1960s from Covington. You see it in the middle picture being moved between these 2 new houses. So you'll see how tight that move was. It was brought out Highland Pike up to the Dixie Highway and brought all the way out the Dixie Highway to Turkey Foot and then out to the campus. They had men stationed at each corner of the flatbed holding up the electrical wires so that they could get underneath the electrical wires in certain areas. But that has become a part of the campus and an interesting part of Northern Kentucky history. So, questions? I've taken you from 1921 to 2021. Thomas More University will celebrate its centennial later this year. And so it's a milestone not only for the university, but also for Northern Kentucky, because Thomas More, of course, for many years was the only higher educational institution in the area. And so if you wanted a degree and you lived in Northern Kentucky and you wanted it from Northern Kentucky, Thomas More was, Villa Madonna, Thomas More was the only higher ed institution. As I said, 1968 is when Northern Kentucky University becomes an official university. UK was offering some classes before then as a part of an extension college from UK. But Northern becomes an official university in 68. So questions?
Yes, Dave, as always, such an informational presentation, and I feel like we learned so much about Northern Kentucky, not just Thomas More, though a lot of things that I certainly didn't know. A couple of items just for everybody. If you're not looking at the chat, there's some really fun dialogue going on. I want to highlight a comment by Anthony Zembro that
yes.
Grand Marshal Judy Mittendorf is now Dr. Judith Marlowe, current chair of the Board of Trustees. I thought that was a very cool, connection.
I thought Dr. Marlowe would be here, and she is here, and that's one of the reasons why I chose that photo.
Excellent. Well, I thought that was very cool.
As a speaker, you should always know your audience.
Yes. And you're so good at that. We have so many questions, but I'm going to try. I know we're a little bit over an hour, but as I was told last time you presented, everyone wants to stick with us. So we're just going to keep on going and answer some of these questions for folks. Let's start with a contemporary question, which is, do you have any information on, just approximately how many students are at Thomas More these days?
I think the last number I saw was somewhere around 2,000, and that's total undergraduate and graduate level.
Great.
And I do know this year, even though COVID, this year they had their second highest enrollment ever.
That's great.
Kudos to Dr. Chillo, and kudos to the team who recruits new students and gets new students interested in coming to Thomas More, because they did a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely, because it has been a tough year all around for education, for sure.
Absolutely.
As we know from the Workforce Investment Board, right?
As we do, yes.
Those of you that don't know, that's my day job. So, well, so getting back to let's kind of go back in history for just a moment. One of our questions was, when you were talking about the Fort Thomas property, that it didn't really end up being, built out at all. But where was that?
I'm not exactly sure. I should have looked that up, and I knew that was going to be a question, and I'm not very well prepared.
No worries.
I believe it was somewhere, for some reason, Kramer Lane. Is there a Kramer Lane in Fort Thomas? Does anybody know? That is ringing a bell to me for some reason.
As a previous Fort Thomas resident, I feel like I should know that, but it's been a long time, so I don't know. Yeah, that's okay.
Fort Thomas is large and has a lot of side streets. So
it does.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I can find out.
Well, as we think about geography for a second, I'll maybe stump you again. This is more of a, maybe a little bit amorphous question, but, I was thinking about all those different halls that you mentioned in Covington, right, before the move. Is there a map somewhere of kind of where all of that would have been? You're naming, some of them sounded familiar, but others I was thinking, was it pretty tightly around the cathedral, or were they?
Pretty much. A lot of them were right behind the cathedral facing Scott Street. Some were on 12th Street. And then Mother of God, of course, was on 6th. So the smaller ones tended to be behind the cathedral, kind of in between the cathedral and the old St. Walburg building, so the original administration building of the college. But there's a yearbook, and I can't remember which year it is, but the inside flap of the yearbook, there's a drawing of the campus, so to speak, and it shows where each of the buildings was. So
that's cool.
It's from the 60s, I believe. So we do know where each individual one is. Great. And there's a number of histories on the college. One was written by Sister Ermina. One was written by Dr. Mellish, that go a little bit more in depth on the history of the college and talk about where those buildings were located. So if you're interested, we have copies of both of those books at the library. You can come and check them out and read up a little bit more on the college. The university.
The university.
Yes. Yeah, I went there when it was a college.
well, speaking of the 1960s for a second, I see that we have a question about the 1960s in terms of, did any of the social unrest of the 60s show up on campus?
Dr. Marlowe could probably, or Tony Zembro could probably answer that question better than I could. From what I know, from the archives, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of unrest. And I think that was one of the reasons why President Johnson chose Thomas More as a kind of safe university or safe college to go to, because, you know, as we said, 1968 was a very hard year for the country. But yes, I don't think there wasn't a lot of civil unrest on the college campus at that time. And it was a pretty tight community. Everybody knew one another. The faculty and the staff and the students were very close. And so I think a lot of that was worked out amongst each other, would be my guess.
That's good to hear. And I see that Mr. Zimbrot has responded in the chat. I'll just let you read that.
Okay. The other claim to fame for Tony is his birthday is the same day as mine, January 2nd. So happy birthday to Tony Zimbrot a few days.
Happy belated birthday to both of you.
Yes.
That's wonderful. So, okay, there have been a number of comments in the chat for those of us that are not alums. Yes. About something called the interlude. Mm-hmm. And I am just curious what that might be about.
The interlude was a saloon in downtown Covington that had been turned into one of the classroom buildings.
Okay.
Yes. And so it was a dive bar basically that was leased by the college and turned into an academic building. When they built the new campus in Crestview Hills, the snack bar in one of the areas of the building was called the interlude. And when I was there, it was still called the interlude. I don't know if it still is or not. But yes, that name was another thing that carried on from the downtown campus to the new campus. Yes, I ate many meals at the interlude, the new one.
The new one.
Yes.
The new one. That's fantastic. Let's see. Oh, going back to when we with the move.
Yes.
To the newest, most present location. Someone wanted to know, were any women's names considered when the name change occurred?
Not that I know of. The two that I know that they were very interested in was St. John Fisher and St. Thomas More, and they made a very conscious decision on Thomas More, mostly for his ethics and for his defense of the faith during the Reformation. And so, and there was a very conscious decision to say Thomas More and not St. Thomas More. I'm not exactly sure why, but Thomas More was chosen fairly quickly. And Dr. Marlowe and Tony might know if the students had any influence in that or not. I don't know if they did or not.
Gotcha. Well, on a different note, our friend Courtney, who is a regular participant, says that it is still called the Interlude Cafe. I wonder how many students have any idea why it's called that. But
well, now you do, Courtney. For the last 20 years, I've been going out and talking to the history majors every year. When you talk about experiential learning with the Ohio Field Station, Thomas More has been doing experiential learning long before they called it experiential learning. Even the history majors were doing experiential learning. So one of the requirements for a history major is to do a mini thesis. So you had to do an original paper of substance using primary resources. And so that's been going on at least since the 1960s. And so I go out every year and tell them about what's available in the region, to what resources are available and topics and those kinds of things. So that's always fun for me. I look forward to that every year.
That sounds like a blast.
Yes.
So
and Courtney was one of those students.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, she's
and her husband.
Okay. I have a feeling that a lot of our guests tonight were alums. Let's see. Daniel Shatler says that, to his knowledge, they did not have input in the name change. It was a bit of a surprise. Oh, and Ms. DeSalvo says the land in Fort Thomas is where the current Vista View subdivision is located.
Okay.
That's where that is.
Very good.
So thank you all. I love our group and everyone kind of.
It takes a village.
Yes, absolutely.
And I have to ask a question of one of the participants because I see Don Solinger sitting in front of me. I can see he's at the top there. Don, I'm going to ask you a question. Are you, if so, shake your hand or something, but are you a relative of Sister Ermina?
Sister Ermina was my great aunt.
Ah.
I visited her regularly on Sundays throughout my childhood.
Yes.
She was a very bright lady. She was
yes.
my coach and butt kicker when I was at Thomas More. She had a parakeet that said more words than I knew when I was 6 years old. She was a fun lady. Right. Additionally, the interlude was a saloon on 12th Street. When I was in Latin school, if a Latin school student would go there, they would be automatically expelled. When I was in Thomas More, periodically we would visit the interlude and Father Murphy would come in and find people that were inebriated and call them into his office the next day.
That's wonderful.
Very good. I love these stories. The other thing that I accomplished when I was archivist of the college, which I'm very proud of because Monsignor Murphy had such an impact on the college. And he would call me over, as I said, to tell, he really just wanted to talk. You know, he was an intellectual. He wanted to talk to somebody about the college. And I said to him one day, I said, have you written your memoirs? And he said, no. And he said, nobody's interested in that. And I said, you played such a role in the college. You need to write your experience at the college. And so 6 months later, he said, come on over, I got something for you. And he handed me a book this big, this thick. He had written his memoirs about his time at the college. And not only were his recollections of the college, but there is at least a paragraph or two on every faculty member that he could remember. But there was one caveat. I was not allowed to release it until 10 years after his death. Monsignor Murphy pulled no punches in his memoirs.
That is amazing. Well, Dave, I do have one other question. We're going to go back in history just a bit, and then I think this might be our last one, though I hate to end this because it's so much fun, but we do have the name History Hour. So, but you mentioned something about cost, and, I was listening, but it kind of caught my attention. And can you talk a little bit, in the founding of, especially these days, right, when we talk about, the expense of higher education?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what the cost was like at the founding, or was there one? How did that work for students, especially when it was a women's school primarily?
The sisters, of course, were funded by the order. Mm-hmm. The lay students, which were charged by the credit hour. And the earliest figure I could find on record was $5 per credit hour. So it would have been $15 per class. So if you were taking 5 classes, that was what, is that $75? Mm-hmm. And just kind of put that into context, my father always told me when he went to Covington Catholic, tuition there was $50 a year. So $75 a semester was $150. So that was a significant amount of money back then, especially for working class families. So it was an investment. You think about $5 per credit hour, what a bargain that was, but $5 is a very different number today than it was in the 1920s and 30s. I think that was early 1930s when it was $5 a credit hour.
Wow. That's amazing. It's so interesting to see that. I see Mr. Shadler posted that in 1966, it was $18 per hour. So yeah, so we've got a number of posts here of, this has been, as someone who's not originally from this area, but definitely calls Northern Kentucky home, this has been just an absolute pleasure tonight. To get to know Thomas more. I mean, I think if I really wanted to, I could probably walk or ride my bike there from where we live now. And I didn't know so many of these things. So this has just been really, really excellent, Dave. And your passion for the place really shines through. So thank you so much.
Can I think one more thing?
Yeah, definitely.
I think it needs to be said is Thomas More exists primarily due to those women. And women often in history don't get the credit they deserve. And so many of the faculty, so many of the staff, so many of the people that held that university together for so many years were those women religious and lay women who worked, especially those women religious who worked for very, very little, and really built a first-class, world-class institution. And so without those women in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, when it was unheard of for women to be in those positions, without them, the university would not exist. And so I think that's a good way to wrap up the talk tonight, to give a shout out to all those women who made higher education possible for so many people in this region.
Thank you. Good job.
Very well said. Well, thank you, everyone. I do just want to mention briefly that next week we will have with us Peter Bronson. He's the former editorial page editor and columnist for the Cincinnati Enquirer, and he will be discussing his book, Forbidden Fruit, the story behind the fiery Beverly Hills Supper Club Inferno, and his theory about the causes of that event, which I think we all know, but it's really proven to be a pretty popular book, and he's definitely taken the circuit. I know Kenton County Public Library recently had him on as a speaker on some of your programming. So not a pleasant topic, but certainly one that was also kind of fundamental in Northern Kentucky's history. So we hope you all come back and join us for that. We are so thankful to have you with us, and certainly thankful for our speaker, Dave Schroeder. And Dave, I'll see you next week, and the rest of you, I'll see you hopefully next Wednesday. So until then, take care. Good night, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.